Deshaun was only 14, but life had already made him feel like he was running uphill every single day. He lived with his mother in a small apartment on the edge of town. The paint on the walls was cracked, the furniture was secondhand, and the noise from the street never seemed to stop. But what hurt the most wasn't the place they lived in, it was the way the world treated him because of where he came from. His mom worked 2 jobs, one at a grocery store during the day and another cleaning offices at night. She tried to make everything feel normal. She'd smile even when her hands ached and say, "Baby will be all right." But Deshaun could see the exhaustion behind her eyes. He wanted to help her, but at his age there wasn't much he could do except stay out of trouble and do well in school. But even school didn't feel safe. He wasn't one of the popular kids. His shoes were old, his backpack had a torn strap, and most days he didn't have lunch money. While others showed off new phones or sneakers, he sat quietly, pretending to be busy so no one would notice. But people did notice, and not in the kind way. The teasing started small. A few kids would whisper and laugh when he walked by. Then it turned louder, meaner. Some called him names, others mocked his clothes. Sometimes they'd bump into him in the hallway just to get a reaction. But Deshaun rarely said a word. He just tightened his jaw and kept walking. He told himself it didn't matter, but deep down it did. Every insult chipped away at him little by little. At night he would lie awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about how unfair it all was. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't bad, he was just trying to survive. The only thing that gave him comfort was watching wrestling videos on an old phone with a cracked screen. His favorite wrestler was Cena. There was something about him, his energy, his confidence, his words. Every time Cena said, "Never give up," it felt like he was talking directly to Deshaun. One night, after another long day of school, Deshaun sat at the small kitchen table while his mom came home from work. Her uniform smelled faintly of cleaning supplies, and her eyes were heavy with sleepiness. He looked at her and said quietly, "Mom, do you ever get tired of fighting?" She smiled, though it was a tired smile. "Of course, baby. But you keep fighting anyway. That's what makes you strong." Her words stuck in his heart. Maybe strength wasn't about how much money you had or how you looked. Maybe it was about not giving up when everything seemed unfair. The next day at school, Deshaun decided to try something new. He signed up to help at the gym after classes. It was part of a small volunteer program. Students could earn community service hours by helping clean up after sports events. He figured it was better than going straight home to an empty apartment. Plus, it gave him an excuse to be around the gym, where wrestling posters covered the walls. He liked the smell of the floor polish and the echo of sneakers on the hardwood. It felt like a place where he belonged, even if only for a little while. But not everyone thought the same. During one lunch break, a group of boys started making fun of him again. They called him Charity Kid because they knew he was part of the volunteer group. One of them kicked his backpack across the floor. Deshaun picked it up quietly, his hands shaking but his face calm. He didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing him angry. Still, the laughter followed him like a shadow. He walked into the gym later that day, trying to shake off the feeling. He swept the floors and arranged chairs for the upcoming charity wrestling event. The school had announced that a surprise guest might come, but no one knew who it was. Everyone was excited. Everyone except Deshaun, who was just happy to be useful. As he worked, the coach noticed how focused he was. "You've got good work ethic, kid," the coach said. "Thank you, sir," Deshaun replied softly. It was one of the few compliments he had heard in months. That night he told his mom about it. She smiled proudly, saying, "See? You're doing good things. Don't let anyone tell you different." But life had a way of testing people right when they started to stand tall. A few days later, as the big charity event drew near, Deshaun was again at the gym early, stacking folding chairs. The bullies came in, loud and laughing as usual. They started joking around, pretending to wrestle each other on the mat. Then one of them pointed at Deshaun and said, "Hey, let's have him be our practice dummy." Deshaun froze. They were bigger, stronger, and outnumbered him. One boy shoved him lightly at first, then harder. The others laughed. Deshaun tried to back away, saying quietly, "Come on, stop. I'm just here to help." But they didn't stop. They circled him like it was all a game. One of them snatched the broom from his hand and tossed it across the floor. "You think you're some kind of hero or something? Always hiding behind that never give up crap," one boy sneered. Deshaun's chest tightened. He wanted to yell back, but his voice got stuck in his throat. He looked around the empty gym, wishing anyone would walk in. After a few minutes, they finally left, still laughing. Deshaun stood there in silence, breathing hard, feeling small and invisible. He picked up the broom and continued sweeping, pretending the tears in his eyes were just sweat. That night, he didn't tell his mom. He didn't want her to worry. Instead, he went to his room, played a John Cena speech on his phone, and listened to the words over and over. When life gets tough, remember, you are tougher. He whispered those words back to himself before falling asleep. The next morning, he woke up early again and went straight to school. The charity event was finally happening. The gym was full of people, parents, teachers, students, and even local news reporters. The air buzzed with excitement. Deshaun was supposed to help clean up after the event, but for now he stood quietly in the corner, watching the wrestlers warm up. He didn't know it yet, but that day was about to change his life forever. When the event began, the principal gave a short speech thanking everyone for coming. The students cheered and the wrestlers put on a few exhibition matches. Then the lights dimmed slightly and the announcer said something that made everyone jump out of their seats. And now please welcome our very special guest. The crowd gasped. A figure stepped out from the side door, tall and broad, wearing a cap and a confident smile. For a moment, Deshaun thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but then the cheers confirmed it. It was John Cena. The gym exploded with noise. Kids screamed, teachers clapped, and phones shot up into the air. Cena waved, shook hands, and smiled at everyone. Deshaun just stood there, frozen in disbelief. His hero, the man whose words had carried him through so many dark nights, was standing just a few feet away. But while everyone else was busy cheering, the bullies noticed Deshaun again. They smirked at each other and walked over. One whispered something and the others laughed. "Hey, look," one said loudly. "There's Cena's biggest fan. Maybe he'll ask for a job cleaning his shoes." A few people nearby laughed, thinking it was just a harmless joke. But it wasn't harmless to Deshaun. His face burned with shame. He looked down, wishing the floor would open up and swallow him. That's when something unexpected happened. The laughter died down. The air in the gym changed. Deshaun didn't notice at first, but John Cena had turned his head in their direction. He had seen everything, the taunts, the push, the look on the boy's face. He started walking toward them. The crowd fell silent, confused about what was happening. The bullies stopped laughing. Deshaun glanced up and froze. Cena was coming straight toward him. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the gym. Each one made the bullies take a step back. Cena stopped right in front of them, his expression calm but serious. He looked at Deshaun, then at the boys who had been mocking him. "Is everything all right here?" Cena asked in a low voice. No one answered. Deshaun's heart raced. He didn't know what to say. Cena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and said softly, "You okay, kid?" Deshaun nodded, though his voice shook when he whispered, "Yes, sir." Cena gave a small smile, then turned toward the crowd. "You know," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "it takes real strength to lift someone up. Anybody can tear someone down." The gym was silent again. Everyone was listening now. The bullies shifted uncomfortably. Cena continued, "The strongest people aren't the ones who push others around. They're the ones who stand tall, even when life tries to knock them down." He looked at Deshaun again. "You keep standing tall, all right? Don't ever let anyone tell you you're less than them." For the first time in his life, Deshaun felt seen. Not pitied, not ignored, seen. The crowd began to applaud. Then they cheered. Some even stood up. The bullies slipped away quietly, their heads down. Deshaun could hardly breathe. He looked up at Cena and whispered, "Thank you." Cena smiled. "Don't thank me. You already had the strength, you just needed someone to remind you." As the cheers grew louder, Deshaun felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe life wasn't just about surviving. Maybe it was about finding moments like this. Moments that reminded him he mattered. And for the first time in a long while, he smiled. Not a small, polite smile, but a real one. One that came from deep inside his heart. After the event ended that day, the whole school buzzed with excitement. Everyone talked about John Cena's visit. Some students still couldn't believe he had actually walked into their gym. Photos and short clips spread across social media like wildfire. Teachers smiled more than usual, and even the principal looked proud. knowing the event had become something unforgettable. But for Deshaun, it was more than unforgettable. It felt like a turning point. He went home that evening with a lightness in his step he hadn't felt in years. The noise of the city didn't bother him, the flickering hallway lights didn't annoy him, and even the peeling paint on their apartment door didn't look so bad. For once, he didn't feel invisible. When he opened the door, his mom looked up from the table where she was sorting through bills. "Hey, baby," she said softly. "You look happy. What happened?" Deshaun couldn't stop smiling. "You won't believe it, Mom. John Cena came to our school." Her eyes widened in surprise. "The wrestler? The real John Cena?" He nodded quickly, dropping his backpack and sitting down. He started telling her everything. The cheers, the crowd, how Cena talked to him, and how he stood up when those boys were mocking him. He didn't go into too much detail about the bullying, but she could tell. She reached across the table, took his hand, and said, "I'm proud of you, baby, you see? Sometimes good people show up when you least expect them." That night, Deshaun lay in bed replaying the moment in his mind. The crowd cheering. Cena's hand on his shoulder. Those powerful words, "Don't ever let anyone tell you you're less than them." He whispered the words again to himself before falling asleep. But even though that moment gave him strength, the next few days weren't as perfect as he hoped. At school, most people now looked at him differently. Some congratulated him, saying how lucky he was. A few students smiled at him in the hallway for the first time. But not everyone was kind. The same boys who used to bully him tried to act like nothing had happened. They avoided him in public, but their glares said enough. Deep down, Deshaun knew they hadn't really changed. Still, he tried not to let it get to him. He started spending more time at the gym after school, helping the coach organize things. He liked the quiet moments when everyone else had gone home. The way the gym smelled faintly of sweat and wood polish, the sound of a basketball echoing far away. It was his escape. One afternoon, as he was cleaning the benches, the coach walked over. "You did good at the event," the coach said. "And that took guts. Not many kids your age could have handled that." "Thank you, sir," Deshaun said quietly. The coach smiled. "You ever think about joining the wrestling club?" Deshaun froze. The idea scared him. "Me? I don't think I'm strong enough." "Strength's not just about muscles," the coach said. "It's about what's in here." He tapped his chest. "You've already proven you've got that kind of strength." That night, Deshaun couldn't stop thinking about what the coach said. He had always loved watching wrestling, but he'd never thought he could actually do it. It felt impossible. Still, the thought wouldn't leave his mind. A week later, he finally signed up for the wrestling club. The first few practices were tough. He wasn't the biggest or the fastest, and every time he fell, it hurt. But he didn't quit. Every time he got tired, he remembered Cena's words. Never give up. The coach noticed his determination and began spending more time helping him learn techniques. Deshaun practiced after everyone else left, sometimes until it got dark. The janitor would flick the lights to remind him it was time to go, and he'd smile, exhausted but proud. At home, his mom cheered him on, though she worried when she saw the bruises. "Just be careful," she said, dabbing ointment on his arm. "I will," he promised. "But I'm not stopping. Not this time." Slowly, things began to change. He got better at wrestling. He felt stronger, not just in his body, but in his heart. The same kids who used to mock him now watched him with quiet respect. Some even clapped for him during practice matches, but a few still whispered behind his back. One afternoon, when practice ended, Deshaun overheard two of them talking near the lockers. "Can you believe everyone's acting like he's some kind of hero? Just because John Cena talked to him?" one boy said. "Yeah," the other replied. "If Cena hadn't shown up, nobody would even care who he was." Their words stung. Deshaun didn't say anything, he just walked past them, pretending not to hear. But deep down, he promised himself something. He would prove that he was more than just the kid John Cena defended. A few weeks later, the school announced another wrestling event, this time a small competition between local schools. Deshaun signed up nervously. He had only been practicing for a short time, but the coach encouraged him. "You've earned your place," he said. "Go out there and show them what you've got." The day of the competition arrived. The gym was packed again, students, parents, and teachers cheering loudly. Deshaun's heart raced as he stepped onto the mat. He wasn't sure he could win, but he knew he wouldn't back down. When the whistle blew, he moved carefully, remembering everything he'd learned. His opponent was bigger and faster, but Deshaun stayed calm. He focused on timing, on patience, on not giving up. He didn't win the match that day, but when the final whistle blew, the crowd clapped loudly anyway. They had seen something in him: heart, courage, and determination. Afterward, the coach patted his shoulder. "You didn't lose today," he said. "You learned." That night, as he walked home, the city lights flickered in the puddles on the street. He smiled to himself, thinking about how far he'd come. A few months ago, he was just the kid everyone picked on. Now he was someone people respected, even if just a little. But life still had its tests. One afternoon, while he was cleaning up after another wrestling practice, the same group of boys who used to bully him walked in. Their tone was different this time, less cruel, more awkward. One of them cleared his throat and said, "Hey man, we wanted to say sorry. You didn't deserve what we did." Deshaun didn't know what to say. He looked at them, wondering if they meant it. Another boy added, "You handled it better than we ever could have." "Respect, bro." It wasn't the kind of apology that erased everything, but it felt honest. Deshaun nodded slowly. "Thanks," he said simply. That was enough. From that day forward, the school felt a little different. The same kids who used to laugh at him now greeted him with a nod or a smile. Even teachers noticed the change. One day during lunch, a teacher stopped by his table and said, "I saw how you've grown lately. Keep it up, Deshaun. You're setting a good example." He smiled shyly, unsure how to respond. But the best surprise came a few weeks later. The school announced that John Cena's team had reached out again. They wanted to highlight students who showed strength and character during challenges. Cena's team had heard about Deshaun's progress, how he joined the wrestling club, and how he was now helping other kids who struggled like he once did. When he heard the news, Deshaun couldn't believe it. "They remembered me?" he asked the coach. The coach nodded proudly. "They sure did. Seems like that moment meant as much to them as it did to you." For the next few days, Deshaun couldn't think about anything else. He didn't know if he'd actually get to meet Cena again, but just knowing that he had noticed meant everything. It reminded him how much one act of kindness could change a person's life. His mom cried when she heard. "See what happens when you don't give up?" she said, hugging him tightly. That night, Deshaun sat on his bed looking at a small photo of him and Cena that someone from school had printed and given him. It wasn't perfect, the lighting was bad, and half of Cena's face was cut off, but to Deshaun it was priceless. He placed it on his desk next to his wrestling medals, even though they weren't gold or silver yet. As he turned off the light, he thought about how far he'd come. From being a scared, lonely boy to someone who stood tall, someone who found his strength not through anger or revenge, but through hope and hard work. He didn't know what the future held. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going back to being the boy who hid behind the bleachers. He was going to keep fighting, keep learning, and keep growing. And maybe one day he'd get the chance to thank John Cena again, not just for standing up for him that day, but for giving him the courage to stand up for himself. As he drifted off to sleep, he whispered softly into the quiet room. The same words that started it all. Never give up. The morning sun slipped through the thin curtains of Deshaun's room, landing across his desk where his few medals and that one photo with John Cena sat proudly. He woke up early that day, not because of an alarm, but because he couldn't wait to get started. Something about the air felt different, like his life was finally beginning to move in the right direction. Ever since the news about John Cena's team recognizing his story spread, the whole school seemed to treat Deshaun differently. Teachers smiled at him in the hallways, and some younger students even came to him for advice. One day, a shy kid from 7th grade stopped him after class and said, "Hey, I saw your match last week. You were really good." Deshaun smiled, surprised. "Thanks, man. You thinking about joining the wrestling club?" The boy nodded slowly. "I want to, but people make fun of me." Deshaun paused for a second, remembering exactly how that felt. He crouched down a little so they were at eye level. "Listen, don't let them stop you. When I started, everyone laughed too, but if you love it, you gotta keep going. One day they'll stop laughing." The kid smiled and nodded. That small moment stuck with Deshaun for the rest of the day. He realized he wasn't just learning how to be stronger. He was learning how to help others find their strength too. That week, the wrestling coach called him into his office. "You've been doing good, kid," the coach said, flipping through some papers. "And since you've become a bit of a role model around here, I want you to help me with something. We've got a few new students joining the team. I want you to help train them." Deshawn's eyes widened. "Me, train them?" "Yeah. You've got patience and you know what it feels like to start from the bottom." That's exactly what they need. It felt unreal. A year ago, he was cleaning the gym floors. Now he was being asked to help train others. He agreed right away. A few days later, the new recruits showed up. They were nervous, just like he once was. Some were smaller, some stronger, but all of them looked unsure. Deshawn clapped his hands together and said, "All right, let's start slow. Nobody's here to be perfect on day one. We all fall. The trick is getting back up every time." He worked with them after school, showing them simple moves and helping them practice balance. Every time someone fell, he smiled and said, "See, that's how we learn." They laughed with him and soon the tension faded. Watching them reminded him how far he had come. He wasn't the scared boy in the corner anymore. He was becoming someone others looked up to. But deep inside, there was still one thing that haunted him: the moment with the bullies. Even though they had apologized, those memories still echoed in his mind sometimes, especially when he was alone. There were nights when he'd sit by the window, looking out at the flickering streetlights, thinking about how small he used to feel. He wasn't angry anymore, but part of him still carried that pain. He wished he could erase it, but maybe, he thought, that pain was what gave him the strength to grow. One afternoon, as practice ended, the coach called him over again. "Got some big news," he said. John Cena's team reached out. They're organizing a youth motivation event next month, and they want to feature stories from students who overcame tough challenges. They want you to be one of the speakers. Deshawn froze. "A speaker? You mean, like, talk in front of people?" "Exactly," the coach said. "They'll have cameras, reporters, everything. You don't have to say much, just tell your story your way." For a few seconds, Deshawn couldn't breathe. The idea of speaking in front of a crowd terrified him. But then he remembered the boy who said he wanted to join wrestling but was too scared. He remembered his mom's tired eyes and how proud she looked that night when he came home after Cena's visit. He nodded slowly. "I'll do it." The next few weeks passed quickly. Between school, practice, and helping the new kids, Deshawn barely had time to think. But at night he would sit at his desk and write little notes, things he wanted to say at the event. He wanted to make sure his words were real, not fancy or rehearsed. One night his mom walked in quietly and placed a cup of tea next to him. "You still up?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just writing some things for the speech." She looked at the paper covered in messy handwriting. "You know, baby, you don't have to make it perfect. Just speak from your heart. That's what people will remember." He smiled and nodded. "Thanks, Mom." The day of the event came sooner than he expected. The school bus dropped off a group of students at a big auditorium downtown. The building was full of people: parents, teachers, kids from other schools, and a few local TV crews. On the stage hung a large banner with bold letters that read, "Never Give Up, Youth Inspiration Event." Deshawn's hands trembled as he looked around. The crowd looked huge. He could feel his heartbeat pounding in his ears. His coach patted him on the shoulder. "You'll do great," he said. When the event started, a few guest speakers took the stage first: local athletes, teachers, and even a community leader who spoke about resilience. Deshawn listened, trying to calm his nerves. Then the host called his name. "Please welcome a young man whose story of courage and determination has inspired so many. Deshawn." The applause echoed around the room. His knees felt weak, but he walked up to the stage, gripping the microphone tightly. The lights were bright, almost blinding. He looked out and saw his mom sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. That gave him strength. He took a deep breath. "When I was younger," he began slowly, "I used to think I was invisible. I didn't have nice clothes, I didn't have money, and a lot of days I didn't even have the confidence to look people in the eye. Some kids made fun of me. They laughed at the things I didn't have. And for a long time I believed maybe they were right, that maybe I wasn't good enough." The room was silent. Every eye was on him. But then one day, he continued, someone stood up for me. Someone I never thought I'd meet. John Cena walked into my school and told me that real strength isn't about what you have, it's about who you are. That day changed everything for me. I started to believe I could be more than just the kid everyone laughed at. He paused, looking at his mom again. "Now I'm here to tell you, no matter who you are, no matter what you go through, don't give up on yourself. Because the truth is, sometimes the world won't believe in you until you believe in yourself first." The crowd began to clap. Some people stood up. Deshaun felt his chest tighten with emotion. He finished his speech by saying, "I used to look up to John Cena because he said, 'Never give up.' But now I understand. Those words aren't just for wrestlers. They're for anyone who's ever felt small, anyone who's ever been told they can't make it. Because you can." As he stepped off the stage, his coach hugged him tightly. "You did it, kid," he said. That was powerful. Reporters came up to him with small microphones asking questions. One asked, "Did you ever imagine you'd be standing here today?" Deshaun shook his head and smiled. "Not in a million years." Later, when the event ended, he found his mom waiting for him near the exit. Her eyes were watery. "You made me so proud," she said softly. He hugged her tightly. "I just told the truth," he said. That night, back at home, he sat by his desk again, staring at his photo with Cena. His phone buzzed. It was a message from the event organizers. It said, "John Cena watched your speech through our live stream. He sends his respect and says he's proud of how far you've come." Deshaun read the message twice. His hands shook and his eyes filled with tears. He didn't even know what to reply. He just whispered to himself, "Thank you." He looked around his small room, same old walls, same flickering streetlight outside. But everything felt new now. He realized he didn't need fame or applause to feel strong.
He just needed to keep moving forward, keep helping others,
and keep believing in the person he was becoming. As he turned off the light, he thought about the shy 7th grader he had encouraged weeks ago, about his teammates who now looked at him with respect, and about the younger version of himself who once hid behind the bleachers. He smiled gently and said under his breath, "We made it this far, and we're not done yet." Outside, the city was quiet and the stars faintly glimmered above. It wasn't a perfect world, but for the first time in a long time, Deshaun felt like he belonged in it. Deshaun sat quietly on the wooden bench backstage, his hands still trembling from everything that had just happened. The cheers from the gym were fading now, replaced by the distant sound of lockers closing and students talking about what they'd just witnessed. It felt unreal. Only a few minutes ago, he was being mocked and pushed around again, the same way he had been for months. Now he was sitting beside John Cena, someone he had only seen on TV, someone who had just defended him in front of everyone. Cena turned toward him with a calm smile. "You okay, kid?" he asked softly. Deshaun nodded, his eyes still wide. "Yeah, I think so, just didn't expect all that." Cena chuckled quietly. "Yeah, things got intense out there. But you handled it well. You didn't fight back, you didn't say anything ugly. That takes strength." No one had ever told Deshaun that before. He was used to hearing the opposite, that he was weak, that he didn't stand up for himself. Hearing those words from someone like John Cena made something heavy lift off his chest. They sat in silence for a while. Cena handed him a bottle of water. Deshaun took a sip, trying to calm down. His heart was still racing. "You know," Cena said after a moment, "I've seen a lot of tough situations. But what I saw out there wasn't just bullying. It was people trying to break someone's spirit. You can't let them win." Deshaun looked down. "It's hard. They never stop." "I know," Cena said, his voice low. "When I started wrestling, people laughed at me too. Said I wouldn't make it, said I didn't belong. But I learned something early. People laugh at what they don't understand. You can't control how they see you, but you can control how you respond." Deshaun listened carefully. Every word felt real. Cena wasn't giving some big fancy speech. He was just speaking like someone who understood. After a while, Cena asked him about his life, his family, school, what he wanted to do when he grew up. Deshaun told him everything. How his mom worked 2 jobs just to pay rent. How he skipped lunch most days, how he tried to help his little sister with homework, even when he was tired. He even told him about how much he loved wrestling, how watching Cena's matches gave him hope when everything else felt impossible. Cena nodded slowly. "You've got a big heart, kid. You remind me of someone I used to know." Deshaun smiled shyly. "Who?" Cena leaned back. "A version of me a long time ago." They both laughed quietly at that. Before leaving, Cena placed a hand on his shoulder. "I want you to remember something. You don't need anyone's approval to know your worth. You already have everything it takes to be great. Just keep pushing no matter what. Promise me that." Deshaun nodded, his eyes shining. "I promise," Cena smiled. "Good, and hey, maybe I'll see you again someday, maybe even in the ring." Deshaun laughed, but deep down a small spark of belief lit inside him. For the first time, he actually thought, maybe, just maybe, he could be somebody. The following days at school were completely different. When he walked through the hallway, people didn't laugh anymore. They whispered instead. Some looked at him with surprise, some with respect, and a few, the ones who used to mock him, avoided his eyes completely. It wasn't just because of John Cena. It was because of what he had done that day, the way he had stood there. Not fighting back, not yelling, just being himself. Somehow that silence had said more than words ever could. By lunchtime, even the teachers were smiling at him differently. One of them, Mr. Andrews, patted him on the shoulder and said, "Heard what happened. I'm proud of you, son." That simple sentence meant a lot. A few days later, a local newspaper wrote about it. "John Cena stands up for local student," the headline said. Deshaun's picture was right there, standing next to Cena, smiling shyly. His mom saw it when she came home from work, and her eyes filled with tears. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "I told you, baby. Kindness always comes back," he smiled. "Yeah, it does." Soon people from the neighborhood started recognizing him. Some parents thanked him for showing other kids that bullying could be stopped with courage, not violence. Even the kids who had bullied him earlier came forward. One afternoon, as he was packing his books, two of them walked up to him, the same boys who had pushed him that day. They looked nervous. One of them spoke first. "Hey, man. Look, we're sorry. What we did was messed up." Deshaun didn't know what to say at first. Part of him wanted to ignore them. But then he remembered Cena's words about real strength. So he took a deep breath and said, "It's okay. Just don't do it to anyone else." They nodded quickly. "We won't, promise." That moment felt like a weight lifting off his shoulders. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it gave him peace. Weeks turned into months, and Deshaun started focusing more on his dreams. He joined the school's small wrestling club. At first, he didn't know any of the moves, but he showed up to every practice, eager to learn. His coach noticed how serious he was and began helping him after hours. Each time he stepped onto the mat, he remembered Cena's words, "Never give up." His body got stronger, his confidence grew, and so did his hope. He started winning small matches, then local ones. Every time he felt nervous, he imagined Cena's hand on his shoulder, telling him to keep going. One evening, as he was walking home from practice, his mom stopped him at the door with a wide grin. "You got a letter," she said, handing him an envelope. It had the WWE logo on it. Deshaun froze. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a short note. "Keep working hard, kid. I'm watching your journey. Proud of you, John Cena." He couldn't believe it. He read it over and over again, smiling so wide it hurt his cheeks. His mom laughed, holding him close. "See? The world sees you now, baby." That night, Deshaun couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like life had finally started to make sense. Not because a famous person had noticed him, but because he had learned to notice his own worth. Months later, a local community center invited him to speak to younger kids about his experience. He was nervous at first, but when he stood in front of the crowd and saw their curious faces, he took a deep breath and spoke from his heart. He told them about the hard days, about being bullied, about crying behind the gym. But he also told them about hope, about how one moment of kindness can change a person's whole life. When he finished, everyone clapped. A little boy came up afterward and said, "I get bullied too, but I want to be strong like you." Deshaun smiled and said, "You already are." That day, he realized something important. His pain had turned into purpose. By the time the school year ended, Deshaun wasn't just the kid John Cena helped. He had become something more, a symbol of strength for other kids who felt invisible. Teachers invited him to talk at assemblies, and he helped start an anti-bullying program at school. He even helped design posters with messages like, "Kindness is power and real strength helps others." His story spread beyond his town. News websites picked it up again. One article said, "The boy who inspired John Cena." Deshaun smiled when he saw that headline. It was funny because, in truth, it was Cena who had inspired him. But that was the beauty of it. They had inspired each other. One afternoon, while sitting at his desk, Deshaun thought about everything that had changed. The fear he once carried was gone. The laughter that once haunted him had turned into applause. He knew life would still have challenges, but now he had something no one could take away: belief in himself. He took out a small notebook and wrote down the words he wanted to live by. Never give up, always stand tall, and help someone if you can. He closed the book and smiled. The world had once tried to break him, but instead it had made him stronger. And somewhere out there he knew John Cena would be proud. Years had passed since that unforgettable day in the school gym. The memory of it still lived in Deshaun's heart like a warm light that never faded. He was no longer the scared boy who used to sit alone at lunch, hiding behind worn-out books and avoiding eye contact. Now he was a man in his mid-20s, strong, confident, and full of purpose. Life had taken him on a journey he never imagined possible. He had become a wrestling coach at the very same community center where he once sat listening to older kids talk about their dreams. The building had old walls and squeaky floors, but to him it felt like home. Every afternoon, the place came alive with the laughter of kids, the sound of running shoes, and the thud of practice mats. It was more than a gym. It was a safe space for children who needed someone to believe in them. Deshaun walked into the training hall one warm evening, holding his whistle and clipboard. The kids were already stretching, chatting excitedly. He smiled. They reminded him so much of himself at that age, full of dreams but unsure of their place in the world. "All right, team," he called out. "Let's get started. Remember, strength isn't just about muscle. It's about heart. You ready?" "Yes, coach," they shouted back in unison. That moment always gave him chills. He wasn't a celebrity or a rich man, but hearing those kids call him coach made him feel like he had achieved something far greater. As they began practice, he noticed a boy sitting quietly at the edge of the mat. The boy's name was Malik. He was small for his age, with shy eyes and a tired look on his face. He didn't speak much, but Deshaun had seen that kind of silence before. It was the same silence he once carried, the kind that hides pain. After practice, Deshaun walked over and sat beside him. "Hey Malik, you okay, buddy?" The boy shrugged. "Yeah, you sure?" Malik hesitated, then whispered, "Kids at school make fun of me. They say I'm too skinny to wrestle." Deshaun smiled softly. "You know, I've heard that before. You want to know what I told them?" Malik looked up curious. "I told them that being strong isn't about how big your arms are. It's about how big your heart is. You've got heart, right?" The boy nodded slowly. "Then you're already strong," Deshaun said with a grin. Malik smiled for the first time in days. That little smile was worth everything. As the weeks went by, Malik started improving. He wasn't the fastest or strongest, but he showed up every day, just like Deshaun once did. The other kids began cheering for him during matches, and soon, his confidence started to grow. Watching Malik reminded Deshaun of his own journey, the pain, the struggle, and the moment that changed everything. He thought about John Cena often. It had been years since they last spoke, but the lessons he had learned from him still guided every choice he made. One afternoon, after practice ended, Deshaun sat in his small office, scrolling through his emails. Among the usual messages, one caught his eye. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Coach Deshaun, you're making a difference." It was from a local youth foundation. They wanted to honor him with an award for his work with children and for inspiring others through his story. Deshaun leaned back in his chair, stunned. He never expected recognition for just doing what he loved. But what touched him most was a line at the end of the message. "We've invited a special guest who wanted to personally congratulate you." He wondered who it could be. The evening of the award ceremony arrived. The hall was filled with people, parents, teachers, and kids from the community center. Banners hung from the walls and everyone seemed excited. Deshaun sat quietly in the front row, adjusting his tie nervously. When his name was called, he walked up to the stage as the audience clapped and cheered. He looked around, smiling shyly. He still wasn't used to being the center of attention. "Thank you," he began. "When I was younger, I never imagined I'd be standing here. I was just a kid trying to survive. But one moment of kindness changed everything. Someone saw me when I felt invisible, and that taught me the most powerful lesson. If you get the chance to lift someone up, do it. You might change their life just like mine was changed."